Welcome back to Rough Restos on this hot sunny day. I need aircon in the workshop. For like one day a year we get sun in Britain. Great. So, what are we doing this episode now? Well, we're doing a pretty part. So, 4.4 TDV8, big 6-pot, beautiful Brembos on the car. Stunning. And as we're currently doing a general mechanical overhaul on the car, it's the great time to take it all apart. Why? Because they could look better. So here we have those beautiful big 6-pot Brembos. Stunning calipers. But some idiot has previously painted these with a brush. So they look pretty bad. They haven't prepped them properly when they painted them. They've only painted parts of them. And not only that, the paint they've used actually comes off and gets sticky with brake cleaner, which is just fantastic. So, they need doing properly. Not only that, this rear caliper started binding. This one I replaced for a used one when I bought the car because it was binding. So that's red. That doesn't match. And then same in the front one again. Front's works spot on. But it's just not pretty enough. So what we're going to do, we're going to pop them off and we're going to make them look pretty. Now, I know a few other YouTubers have done this. I'm not copying them. I actually do this to a lot of my cars. So if you have seen any of the Capri stuff before, that's got nice big metallic purple Brembo 4-pots on the front. I've done up. The Golf, again, same thing. Paint rim calipers up. I do it slightly differently to how a lot of other people do it. Mainly because of the equipment I've got and it's just what I've tried and I know seems to work for me in the past. So let's crack on now. We'll pop the car up and I'm going to run for a minute how to remove these calipers. Why'd I get a puppy? All she wants to do is play ball all day long. Is it? You want to play ball? You want ball? That's occupied for about 5 seconds. So, car's in the air. Ignore all the corrosion and whatnot else because that's all part of the other videos going on currently. So here we've got the beautiful big Brembo. Oh dear, and my new little torch almost broken. You stay somewhere around there. So, big old Brembo, beautiful bit of kit. What do we need to get it off? Pretty easy. Need a 21mm 12-point socket for the caliper bolts. Ideally a decent sized ratchet for that one as well. Where are you? I'm trying to record. Maybe a 3/8 ratchet, a 13mm and a 14mm for the banjo. 6-point ideally. Brake, well, hose clamp tools ideally, but yeah, not the end of the world. And what's this one here for? An 18mm for the rears, hammer and a punch. That should be all we need really to remove these calipers. Fairly simple. So what you got here is you've got the 2 little slider pins for your brake pads, and then you've got, I've never seen this before, but there's another sort of pin here with a bolt on the back of it. So there's a 30mm head there, 14mm for the banjo, and then you've got your main 12 points in the back there for the caliper. So they're probably very tight. They're actually all probably very tight. Now, one thing, steel pins, aluminium calipers, quite common for the slider pins to seize in. So you can definitely need a punch, and it might be very difficult to remove. You might need some heat. I've already given mine a test hit and actually they seem to move, so I'm happy with that. So let's just remove this caliper a moment. So let's try and get these slider pins out a moment. That went easier than expected. So before we go any further, we need to remove this banjo bolt. Or loosen it off at least. The worry is that it snaps inside the caliper. So we've got a steel bolt into aluminium caliper. So I'm going to give it a little whack tightened up first. Oh, let's see the move right. And then gently undo it. Oh, maybe lucky. Pop our... So these tools aren't recommended. These are hose clamps, just because they do pinch the line, and if you've got a old knacker line, they could damage it. But I'm probably going to be replacing the lines anyway, so that really doesn't matter, and it's going to save making a mess for now. So, well, kind of. Let's pop this one off. There we go. Calipers. Right. So, last job. The big caliper bolts. Nope, that's not going to fit. Now, I have had these off before, to be fair, so they should come off. Oh, but they're still tight. Oh. Now, try and slide the beast off. Oh, don't do that. Here we go. And drop a pad straight out. And there we have it. A clip. Big old bolt. Two slider pins in our locking slider pin, whatever you call that, I'm not sure. And then a humongous caliper. So obviously we could remove the pads whilst the caliper was still on the car then, or we could just pull it off and remove them afterwards. They're huge pads. We've still got a bit of meat on them, to be honest, but the caliper's very dirty, so it does need a good old clean up, and that paint job is horrific. So, but look at them beasts. So I'm now going to go remove the other one, and then we'll jump onto the rear. So the rears are actually a lot easier than the front. Sliding calipers. So what you've got here is you've got your 18mm carrier bolt, which is this part here. They bolt it onto the hub here. And then you've got your 13mm slider pin bolts here for the actual caliper, and a 14mm again on the banjo. So pretty easy. Just a case really of pop the 13 well. Don't really matter what way we do it, but we might as well pop the 13s off because we need to split these two anyway. Pop the two 13s out, and then pop the two 18s out, and a 14mm banjo bolt, and away it comes. So let's do that a second. So other bits and bobs in the workshop have been happening since, but now we're on to the brakes finally. So, what are our plans? Well, front calipers, these massive 6-pot Brembos. All I plan to do is tidy them up. I don't want to really revamp 12 lots of pistons and seals, especially not when they work absolutely fine. You know, if this ain't broke, don't fix it. Especially currently the way this Range Rover is going, it'd be really handy not to. So we're going to give them a sandblast, a clean up and a paint up, and then just new bleed nipples, new everything else, you know, it can go onto it like that. That's them too, plus obviously cleaning up all the sliders, fitting kits, all that kind of stuff. The rears, obviously I replaced this one back when I bought the car, so this one here needs to be painted up. This one here was sticking, and I replaced this one on the rear side because that was also sticking at the time. So I thought, well, I need to fix this one. Instead of buying another used caliper, what's the point? Might as well fix them. And I'm going to fix one, I might as well do both. So what we've got here is we've got a seal kit from Brake Caliper Solutions and 2 new pistons, and we've got brand new slider kits as well. We've got a whole pack of stainless bleed nipples for all the calipers, brand new dust boots, and all new brake lines. So the aim is to completely rebuild the rear calipers, because they're not handbrake calipers, so all there is a simple piston in them. So, you know, the fact this one's sticking, it's only really because the piston's going to be a bit seized. So if we clean it all up and that, we should be spot on. So it's just too simple really not to bother trying to rebuild them. So we might as well rebuild both of these ones. I'd rather have rebuilt genuines than anything aftermarket. And then yeah, clean these ones up. So what we're going to do first? Well, the number one thing to do before we do any work now is to ensure that all the bleed nipples come undone, because you don't want to mess around with that once they're painted. You don't want to be scratching up the caliper or realising you have to suddenly get them drilled out and welded and all sorts. So we need to make sure that every single bleed nipple comes out and the threads are good before we go any further, because if not, we need to fix that before we start tightening things up. Also need to strip off all these sliders a minute, strip off all the pad fitting kits, get them all separated down into simple little parts, and then I think we can start blasting really. The rears, I'm going to probably pop off these dust boots so I can blast in deep around them, and I'm not going to worry about them too much. The fronts, the glass media blasting won't affect the rubber boots, so we can kind of carefully go in around that with no need to mask them off. And then what I've done for all the inlets for the brake lines, I've put in M10x1 bolts to stop any media going obviously into a caliper, because that's the last thing you want. This is lagged in rubbish, this is. So let's try to get all these bleed nipples undone in a minute, strip these calipers down, and then we're ready to start looking at getting them sorted. Right, so just trying to get the seized piston out now before I go much further, just to make sure it can come out and it's not knackered before I refurb the caliper. So what I've done is I've cut off the boot around the outside. Don't need to do that, but just done it. Using compressed air to blow into the cylinder in order to try force the piston out, whilst having to go back and forward with the device as well and use the grips to free up the piston when it gets stuck. And then ideally you want a bit of block wood in there, or something to at least try and catch the momentum, because when this piston does eventually come out, it will come out with some force, and obviously we'll load brake fluid. So, not ideal. Just doing that there, just as to try and catch the piston as it comes out. And I'll blow some air into it. There we go. And there we now have the piston. It's just popped out to where it was a bit corroded around the outside of it. So that's obviously where it's getting stuck in the caliper. So we can give that a clean up and it should all be good. It's a bit dirty in there, but it's probably quite old. So now we know it comes out. Remove the rest of the dust boot because it's just going to be in our way. So that's the piston freed up. Comes in and out easy now. Actually, it runs perfect now. So I could have just cleaned it up, reused the rubbers and that, but that's no. All new, why not? What's it, like 30 quid for the rebuild kit for two rear calipers? It's not much. Not to know that you're doing it proper. So now the fun part. Sandblasting time. I haven't used my sandblasting setup in a long time, so I best go dig it out a minute and we'll see what we can do. So excuse the mess, this is my sandblasting setup. So I've got my 18 CFM compressor, runs through a air dryer, couple air water traps and regulators. Comes back in on I think it's a 1/2 inch hose, or 10mm, one or the other, which is the same line I use for my spraying. Into my, not an ice cream fridge, it's my blast cabinet. And in here, like all my other designs, it's dangerous, okay? Don't judge me. So we've got a couple LED tubes in here, caliper, just one of the cheap sandblasting setups, which actually, for this cabinet, works extremely well. And at the side here, we got our controls for our lighting, and then we got a ram air cone filter here. And that thing feeds a Hoover motor on a speed controller, which gives us a bit of ventilation, although it does sound like it's dying. So yeah, I'm going to crack on now, try and blast it. I just had a quick check to make sure that was working. Absolutely spot on. So yeah, I still quite like this setup for a DIY. I need to finish it. I need to build plates and fit them gloves in properly so the sand doesn't come out here and all that, but I've been meaning to do that for the last 3 years. So one day I'll get to it. So I'm going to start sandblasting all these bits. I'm using, I think it's a medium grit sand in there. Down there I've got some iron shot, fine grit and soda. So yeah, right. I best crack on blasting. So, with the calipers blasted, although it doesn't actually look like these ones have been blasted now because they've sat for 2 weeks. Wasn't intending to, but they need a bit of a touch up of blasting again. That's not a problem at all. So before I go any further now, I want to change these seals and pistons, get them ready to go. Then I can cover up the new seals there and the pistons. So yeah, now it should be a relatively straightforward job. I've done it many times before on other calipers. We've got our dust boot, yeah, I guess so, and our internal actual piston seal. Got a new pair of pistons in here, which I'm assuming are the right ones. I hope, we'll find out in a second. They're actually marked up for Range Rover Sport, because trying to buy anything for the L322 on these is quite difficult, but supposedly the Sport uses the same... No, yeah, these are the vented disc rear calipers, which are the same across apparently all rear L322s, but trying to get the pistons from them that was pretty hard. Everyone's out of stock. But it's the exact same part numbers for the Range Rover Sport stuff, which also uses the same rear calipers for certain models, I believe. So we'll find out. That's what I'm hoping anyway. Relatively inexpensive to do it. So let's now pull these pistons out, remove the old seals. What you're going to need is some red rubber grease. They actually usually come with some in the kit as well. Brake cleaner, blue roll, selection of picks and such. Maybe a pair of grips or something to push the piston back in with. Might actually end up using a proper wind back tool to push it in neat, or a vice, one or the other. And just a bit of patience really, and ideally a cleanish working area. Airline helps with that as well to blow out the caliper. I'm going to stop rambling on, let's get on with it. Innit puppy? Now you want me to thread a ball, don't you? Not work. Right, see our piston out. So what we're going to do now is get one of the hooks inside the caliper. Hook out what's left of the dust boot. I'll try to. It's very... Seems like it's glued in there. Just very, very tight. I guess it's potentially a lot of miles. So that's the rest of the dust bit out. And below that we've got the main caliper seal. Out he comes. Be easier to turn torch, wouldn't it? Out he comes. And we'll give it a quick brake clean. And do a visual inspection inside. So I see no debris in there. The cylinder walls look fine, although they should do really, because unless they got water in there, there's not much to go wrong. The rubber seal makes the contact with the piston. So that all looks in there pretty good. Pretty clean actually. So a bit of blue roll in there in a second to clean it out. Comparing the two pistons, they are the same diameter it seems. The only difference is the metal on this piston at the top is slightly deeper, but it is aftermarket and it's only by literally millimeters, if that. Oh yeah, it's like a 1mm difference in it. Other than that, looks good. So run a pick in around the grooves just to make sure there's no debris or any leftover rubber. Bit of blue roll in there to yes, the one thing to watch out when you're sandblasting is you most definitely do not want sand inside that bore. Just check that they are compatible, and they do appear to be the same. And then there. Yep. So it's the right seal kit it seems. So what we want to do, make sure we've got cleanish hands, ideally gloves, would be smart. I always red rubber grease the entire seal. You could use brake fluid instead, if you haven't got any red rubber grease, but brake fluid is horrible to get on the skin and whatnot, so if you do, I would certainly advise gloves. Now what you do is gently push this seal into the groove. That's a one-time seal fitted. Nice and snug, pushed in, perfect. And then we have a dust boot. Now this is the one that always gets me. Trying to get these things fitted. Now they don't really fit great once the piston's in place. So once again, so I thought I'd do a smart thing and put a caliper in the vise above my workbench. It's a seal, absolute pig to get in. Just keep going for it and make sure you push it in really good with your finger and get it tight in there, because you're going to need that in before you move on. So next step now will be a case of basically greasing up the piston, getting it, stretching this boot to get the piston through that boot and then down to the main seal, and then just pushing the piston in. And obviously once the piston's in, this lip seal here will sit in the groove on the piston. Job's a good one. So with that, I'm going to probably, you can use G-clamps, vices, I've used all sorts before to put the pistons in. There's so many ways of doing it. Piston all greased up. So we've got to get in here and stretched over that boot. That is the pig job. Right, we're going to piston pop past that really awkward seal. What I have to do is gently turn the piston, rotate it, and I'm going to put a bit of downward pressure on it to get it to carefully go past the seal, obviously without tearing the seal. Which, oh, with ease. Oh, with ease. Oh. Go straight on in. Dust boot is just how it's meant to. Absolutely beautiful. And there it is. Sitting in perfect. So what we can try now is you can put a block of wood in there, put a bit of air in there, make sure the piston doesn't leak, and that the boot is sitting right. That's a block of wood then, stop the piston coming right out. Just feed a bit of air into it. Yep. Piston comes out, boot set on it perfectly. Ideal. And that's me happy. Now to the other one. Sorry about the background noise, all the fans on and all sorts at the moment. But calipers are all hung up, degreased, pistons masked up, yeah, sandblasted, ready for paint. So what we're going to put on them. Now obviously a lot of people just use straight out of the can caliper paint, high temperature stuff. I don't. I've never needed to use high temperature paint. Unless it's a track car, they're not going to be getting smoking hot, unless you have an issue with the caliper, of course. So I've only ever used 2K paints, and they've always worked spot on. So usually I'd use an etch primer. This case I've got epoxy primer. Basically the same stuff. Epoxy is actually a bit more modern and better in a lot of cases, so should still be absolutely fine. So I've got 2K epoxy primer, etch primer, along the lines, absolutely fine. Obviously remember the front calipers are aluminium, so it has to be an etch, epoxy or something suitable for aluminium. Then we'll be following it on with a 2K paint. So I've got me some 2K yellow here. We've actually got rape yellow, great. So we're using a 2K paint. Now if you use metallics and whatnot, you could use a base coat and a clear coat. We're just going for a solid 2K yellow. And then we've also got some clear coat. There's a reason for that, and that will become apparent, but that is because, ignore the cake, obviously I'm putting Brembo stickers on them. Someone had put Brembo on them before, but then I realised once I sandblasted it that you can still see faint outlines. It actually should say Range Rover, but I bought Brembo, kind of wanted to say Brembo, so we're sticking with that. So what we'll do is once we've painted it and finished the yellow and it's tacked off, we'll be applying the sticker to it, and then we'll be going back over it with a clear coat to seal that sticker in. so there's none of this peeling rubbish, no difficulties. You know, it'll be in the paint and it'll be perfect. That's the idea anyway. So rather than bore you too much, you don't need to know the technical details of mixing these paints and all that kind of stuff and that. I'll be spraying it from my DeVille Biss 1.3 gun. But to be fair, if you've got this kind of stuff or any of these tools, you know what you're doing anyway. So if you haven't and you've got this far, then you can just use rattle cans or whatever you want to do. You know, this is the way I do it, and this is what works for me, and it's because of the equipment I've got over the years of all my DIY projects and whatnot. So I enjoy spraying. So anyway, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to get these painted. Next time you see me, these will be in paint. This might be the first time I've shown the calipers. So there we go, that's the 6 pot back on there with new stainless steel bleed nipples and dust covers. Didn't come out too bad. Can't say I'm 100% happy with them. I learnt quite a lot spraying them. One, the way I set it up with the ladder and that, terrible choice. Struggled to get spray gun into it. Two, yellow paint, in particular I think the one I had, the pigment is just really weak. So these took literally 5 coats and I still haven't got the coverage on them I wanted, which is pretty mental really. So in some areas they're a bit more green, but they are what they are. They actually still look pretty good, and they look 10 times better than before by miles. And then the rear, obviously the rear had the new dust boots. Did accidentally get a bit of paint on that one there, oh well. New dust boots, new pistons, yet to still put in the new bleed nipples on these, and I'm also putting in new slider pins, new boots. We're reusing the stainless clips because they obviously blasted off in there. There's nothing wrong with them, they're absolutely perfect. So I'm going to spend a fortune on fixings. Yeah, so I'm going to pop them on now. I'll just quickly time lapse changing this stuff here. It's pretty self-explanatory. Changing a bleed nipple, changing the slider pins and that. A bit fiddly, but yeah, I'll do that a second. So popping the caliper back on is actually easier than removal. So I've degreased the brake disc before I put it on, clean it up. Got our slider here, or carrier, sorry. Goes on exactly to make it come off. What I've done is I've preferred my bolts, put a bit of copper slip on them, just because it's nice in the future and if you want to actually undo it again. It's very handy. Move the brake hose out of the way. To torque level tight. What we're going to do is take a little bit of aluminium brake grease here. I know some people use all sorts of grease here, some people don't use any grease. I'm just going to put it a smidge, just a little smidge, where the little tabs of the brake pads sit. Just to help out a smidge. And take our brake pads. Give them a quick clean up. I have already mostly cleaned these up to be fair, but I want to remove a bit more of the brake dust off them just for aesthetics. Obviously, if you're renewing your brakes, you might be putting new discs and new pads in. I would be, but these have only done 1,000 odd miles, maybe 2,000 miles, so they're like brand new still. So hence why I'm not changing the pads and discs anywhere, because they're all absolutely fine. Now why don't I leave my blue roll? Typical. Put it somewhere safe, of course. So we've got our blue roll. Stay. brake clean off the pads. We don't want to be transferring any greases onto that disc at all. That's going to ruin our braking. And then slot our pad in. So that's that. And then that one here just simply slots back in as exact same way you removed it, really. That should be quite free. That's that. Now as for the caliper, well, that's also really easy. Simply hook your caliper back over, line it back up your sliders, and bolt it back on. And then something I recently bought is these US Pro super slim spanners. Really good. I use them on the ball joints here, use them on this here now, because normal spanners never fit ball joints, never fit caliper sliders. So they were absolutely perfect. But also the more keen-eyed ones of you may notice that the nice shiny sliders aren't on there. Because they didn't fit. The sliders sent me the wrong ones. So new boots, new bolts, old sliders, which is really annoying. Because obviously I didn't prep them to make them look nice or anything. So yeah, that's them ones. Now onto the front. So the front's a very similar process to the rear. Again, the opposite how you took it off. So get your nice greasy hands, but maybe nice new painted calipers. Got a nice new cleaned up bolts with a bit of copper grease on them. Bolted up tight. So, same as the rear, cleaned and degreased the pads up. So they're going back in again. So with our pads slotted in, what I'm going to do is put a smidge of grease on our pins. Only a very smidge, especially where they sort of sit in the caliper around this little steel collet here, it gets stuck. Grease that one up right nicely. Might as well. And then we'll slide the first one in from behind. Then we can insert our big retaining pin in the middle. Again, smidge of grease, especially where it sits in the caliper. Really doesn't do it any harm. Only such a smidge, but we just don't want it seizing if we can, because they're a pig if they do seize. Slide him in. That's fine. Sit it in. Hook your retaining clip back in how it was when you got it. Grab your last pin. Never guess what. Smidge of grease. Again, this is the aluminium grease. And then push this one down. Give it a little tap. Use your punch to make sure it's seated fully home. And put your securing bolt in. Done. And if I do say so myself, that is the brakes looking so much better than they were before. At least now, not only have I got 2 yellow calipers on the front, I've also got 2 on the back, rather than a red one and a rusty one. And not only that, they are painted in a paint, to which case they'll get brake dust on them, and I can put brake cleaner on them, and they'll wash off. Not go sticky and turn into a mess. So much more durable coating than what was previously applied to the front. Not a perfect finish. But then again, really did I want a perfect finish? It's a brake caliper. It goes behind the wheel. It's not a show car where I'm going to put it on some pristine concourse section where it's going to be up on axle stands for all to see. To me, the finish is obviously, it's a lot better than a hand painted finish anyway. So, but yeah, I've learnt a few bits from my own mistakes and better ways of doing things now. So yeah, I think I'm definitely happy with that. Now, the proof's going to be in the pudding really, and I best see if they actually work in a moment. So, but that's a different video. So, yeah, very happy with that. So that's yet another video wrapped up on the L322 to join the already massive list of videos that I'm creating for this one currently and all the previous videos on L322. Anything from replacing transmissions in these to testing inbreed adapters or getting them tuned. So yeah, I'm happy to be making more L322 content. I know it seems to go down pretty well, so yeah, I'm happy with the outcome of the brakes. Yeah, they didn't look great before. And it kind of ruins it really when you've got such a beautiful vehicle. So next I think is going to be tarting up the outside of the vehicle really. I need to do a bit of paint work needs a lot of polishing and just general tidy up to make it look, well, it looks pretty good for its mileage of almost 200,000 as it is, but it could look a lot nicer. So let's make it look like a 70 grand vehicle in another video one day. But until then, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Maybe found it useful, maybe not. If you do like the video, then I'd appreciate if you actually like the video, because that really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Drop me a comment, tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I've done anything stupid, or I might have done it okay. And yeah, subscribe for plenty more. Like I say, there's so much more on this vehicle already, and previous L322s on the channel, and there's so much more to come. So yeah, with any luck, I'll see you guys next time. I've been Jordan. Cheers.